Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Falling Off the Floor podcast. This week we have a special guest, Finn Bailis. Uh, Finn and I got connected probably about 5 or 6 months ago, something like that, maybe a little less. He is the founder at Global Media Assets, which is this really incredible and new approach to the creative industry. He's got a big background in skiing and lives in Telluride. So, without further ado, I'll let you introduce yourself, Finn.
Well, thank you, Austin. Yeah, that's right. I'm Finn. I started Global Media Assets, I guess a little over 6 months ago. It's been kind of a slow and chaotic start because we're finding our groove within a complicated industry, which is something I want to talk about for sure. But essentially, we're a media asset brokerage or an automated ad agency that lets brands work with a lot of freelance creatives, which is how I got into this because I have a lot of friends who are particularly talented, and I found that they never really got the respect they deserved, whether they were good in front of or behind a camera. They'd end up doing work for like 50 bucks or for their friends. And then meanwhile, there's ad agencies that are charging millions to shoot commercials that to me don't look that much better. So pretty much we're finding our groove in the middle of that. And yeah, that's how we got it connected.
Yeah. So, for our ski audience, I know you were part of the team on the Dean's List, and that film within the ski industry. Can you tell us a little bit about the Dean's List and how that came to be, and all the skiing and your background in skiing?
Yeah, of course. No, that was definitely my intro to the media space. Anyways, so I grew up in Telluride, competitively skied a ton, but was never good enough to get paid, like everyone is, and so I went to college instead. And then in college, we kind of realized we had a crew of like 10 of us that were really good skiers, but not good enough to go pro. And so they were, I had friends like Peyton McElhaney who was studying a civil engineering degree, but could have been in the X Games had things been tiny bit different 4 years ago. And so we just decided we'd film for a year, and it was supposed to be like this half skiing, half school thing where it'd be a lifestyle movie. But honestly, Cedar Palmer, who's the director, editor, really the producer, kind of took it over because he was in Telluride skiing a lot more and had more talent. So then we put together the first Dean's List that was kind of just um, a conglomeration of skiing from everywhere. And so we played into that, and it was this whole there's no exclusivity. It wasn't sponsored by one brand or one, group of skiers. Like anyone who's good enough to do something cool on skis and get it filmed could just submit their clips. And so the first Dean's List was like that. The second one, something pretty similar came to be. And then after that, we decided we would just turn the Dean's List into a nonprofit and we would tour amateur films. So it's kind of the same thing, but it's just decentralized. We're not doing the production, we're just touring a lot of amateur films. And so this is our first year doing that. We're a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. We were able to fundraise a little bit last year and give out some grants. We paid for a young athlete to go to Junior Worlds. And then, yeah, this fall we'll be touring in Telluride, Boulder, Bozeman, Winter Park. Yeah.
Awesome. Where did the name Dean's List come from?
So we were all in school, we were in college, and I was like, I want it to be a play on us being students. And Miles Burrow, actually, I got to give him credit. He's the one who thought of the name. We were driving. He's like, "How about honor roll?" And I was like, "Honor roll's kind of lame." He's like, "How about the dean's list?" I was like, "Yeah, that sounds cool." And so we stuck with it. Now it's kind of hilarious because we're pretty far from, the dean's list or students, but the name stuck, and we had a good logo, and so yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it's funny. There was a film years ago called The Dean's List.
Is there really?
Yeah, I'm trying to think who did that film. When
Was it a
I
ski
was
movie?
first, yeah, it was a ski movie many years ago. You know what? We should look it up on the spot here because
No.
when you first told me the Dean's List, I was like, oh my god, that. Maybe I'm thinking of the same thing. Maybe it's a different name. I
Well,
don't
so the
know.
first dean's list, like I mean, that was 4 years ago, I guess, but no, just last fall, some kids. I wanted to say they're in like Australia, but they made a ski film. They called it the Dean's List and they posted it on New Schoolers and people like freaked out. And they're like, no, 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 this has already been done. And it was hilarious. They like posted an apology and they messaged us. And I was like, no hard feelings, man.
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking of something else. Anyways, so you're in college. You guys make the decision to do this film, turn it into a nonprofit. Where did Global Media Assets like truly come from? I know, you mentioned that you had a lot of creative friends and you were trying to change the industry in a way which that's why I've been so interested in Global Media Assets from the start. And when you officially kind of pitched the idea to me on coming on as an ambassador, it does change the industry. I'm on client calls all the time, and the amount of money that flows in these spaces where huge organizations can afford to spend $1 million on a 30-second ad spot. How does the rest of the world and industry create ad spots? Not everyone has $1 million marketing budget. So where did this like truly come out of? Why did you want to make this shift in the industry?
Okay, so the genesis of the whole idea is kind of funny because it boils down to ignorance on my part. I didn't come from the marketing space. Like I said, I was a hobby videographer and we made the films and it was fun to party and that kind of stuff. But I studied engineering. I lived in Europe for a couple of years. I did an MBA and I worked in real estate. And then I came home last summer and literally it was like a pause in my life. I was like, I need to figure out what I want to do. And I didn't want to do anything too complicated. I was like, I had finished these difficult degrees, and I was like, oh, well, my friends are so good at filming stuff, and I love being in the outdoors, and I'd love filming my friends who could skate or ski, and so I started just kind of being a part of that. And like last fall, I thought I'll build a small agency, and I thought it would be simple. And that's why it's funny now looking back because it's been, so much work. But
Yeah.
I guess the very first thing that put it together was Ferrari North America was going to be in Telluride for this. It's called the Telluride Autumn Classic. It's like a car festival. And so I just heard that they would have like 25 Ferraris in Telluride at the airport, which is like the highest runway in North America. It's like just picturesque, and then it'd be at sunset with all these Ferraris, and I was like, oh my gosh, like is anyone filming that? And so I started I just called the head of the festival, and she was like, yeah, we have no media team. I was like, okay, can I do it? And I didn't have a media team at the time either. And she said, yeah. And so then I hired Cedar and like a handful of high school interns actually. And I had like global media assets, like stickers on their hoodies. And I was like, okay, let's just film this thing. And then I got in touch with Fry North America. They didn't have a media team either. So I was like, okay, I'll work with them. And pretty much put it together off that, bid way higher than I thought I could. They said yes. Turns out I had a terrible contract and we actually got screwed out of the entire deal by Ferrari, which is a crazy story. But whatever. I realized in that moment that this industry is really unique where there's this huge gap between my friends who are talented, the high school interns or Cedar who are just trying, working their butts off and not getting recognized, and then there's the people that Ferrari would have hired and charged, the 100K for to come and get paid. So that was, I guess, that event was sort of the genesis. And then my ignorance of just how complicated the industry was is how I delve into this whole, oh, I'll make a platform that just puts one and two together. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated than that, and the economics behind it are even more complicated. But that's where it started.
That's incredible, man. I didn't even know the background of that, so I was just as interested
Yeah.
in hearing about that. What is the story behind the deal falling apart with Ferrari?
It's cat's out of the bag now, so I'll explain it. So this is what happened. I first got in touch with the people facilitating the event, and that's the Telluride Autumn Classic. They were gonna hire us to film it for their own marketing content, and I was like, okay, that's awesome, but who else is coming? Can I film for Porsche or Ferrari or whoever? And she's like, yeah, Ferrari Club of America is coming. And I was naive at the time. I was like, oh, it's like Ferrari's coming. So I got in touch with Ferrari Club of America and I kind of bid a contract with them. And the gentleman I was working with was pretty unresponsive and difficult to work with and vague. And so he said, oh, I need all this content. I need people here. I need drone shots. I need all of it. So I'm putting together this team that's going to do a pretty expensive production. And that's how I'm bidding it. But he wouldn't sign anything. And so they're driving down 35 cars from Denver, and I'm not going to miss that. And so I remember the morning, and I was so stressed all week. Like, he still hasn't signed the contract. He still hasn't signed the contract. And I had actually had two contracts. One was for Ferrari Club of America, which allegedly they had a small marketing budget for, and the other was for Ferrari North America. And of course, my dream was to work with Ferrari North America. I was like, if my first client can be Ferrari North America, like will blow up. And so I was trying to get him to sign either of the contracts, and he would call me as soon as I emailed him and be like, "Yeah, man, it looks perfect. Like, we'll see you tonight." And I was like, "Okay, great, but can you sign the contract?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, we're losing service. Just always something." And so finally they're driving into the valley, and I'm not going to miss that. So I literally went and picked up Cedar. We drove to Keystone Hill and Telluride and like got the drone up and filmed all of the Ferraris coming to town. And then that kind of started the whole festival. And the whole festival, every single morning, day, I had someone at each location filming on a drone, filming on an FX6, like just got all the content they could possibly need. And then after that, um, I handed over some of the contact, and the guy went like totally cold on me, content. And the guy went totally cold on me, and I couldn't get any confirmation of our contract or get paid. And he used like some of the content. It was just like the most naive first time videographer story. But in desperation, I got in
Yeah.
touch with Ferrari North America, like the actual team. And they told me that guy has no marketing budget from us. That's a club. There's no relation. And so he worked for the Ferrari dealership, but the actual Ferrari North America team was really helpful. And I talked to them for months, and they went through all my content. And I guess technically they still own some of it. They haven't used any of it. They needed like more winter content for their page, but yeah, it was a ridiculous story. It was just hours and hours and hours of work, and we barely got paid.
Yeah. And I think that is an important thing for people in the creative world to realize that I made literally the exact same mistake early on with several deals in that exact same thing. They promise one thing, you're like waiting for the contract, and you're excited. Like, especially, this is like your first big
Hmm.
thing, you're going to shoot it anyways because you have the hope that it's going to go right. And then what I've learned is that most people in the world are pretty shitty. And I've been screwed on a handful of contracts throughout my tenure in the creative, you know, world. And that's where I've decided, like, unless we are pen to paper, you are not getting a thing out of me. Because the same thing happens. You'll send it to them, they love it. Oh, we'll pay you after we see the content. And then they take it, use it, download it. We actually just had something similar happen with someone we thought we
Hmm.
trusted very recently. Um, so, where do you see global media assets going? Is what's kind of the 5, 10 year goal? I know this is, and you guys just launched kind of the beta. You're getting, so you're in infant stages
Hmm.
now. What are the next steps for global media? Where do you see this going over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so right now it's very much so a beta phase and a testing phase, and it kind of plays into that story perfectly, which is that although a lot of our team has a ton of experience, I don't necessarily. And like my vision for this product doesn't come from a ton of experience getting screwed over in those situations. It's definitely birthed from it a little
Hmm.
bit, but the idea to have the brands pay us up front and hold the money in escrow, and then we pay out the creators like a little bit at a time, like that had to come from one of our creators who I was talking to about the platform and getting them on it, and like they're like, hey, you should do it like this. And so right now we're just testing and doing whatever we can to make the product the best we possibly can for both brands and creators. So the 5 year, 10 year goal is essentially this: we spend the next few months getting a couple hundred users on the platform, and we get a handful. I say handful, it really should be a couple hundred projects, but it's much harder to acquire a brand than a creator. But we get a couple projects on the platform, and these are posts from brands for certain, media assets that need produced. And then we have our creators bid on them, and we actually start making some deals and generating a little bit of revenue for the company. We do that to the point where we can prove that it's really scalable, and then we fundraise the way that big startups do with venture capital, And we make that platform a lot more robust and globally available so that we can start targeting customers that have global marketing needs, like, huge credit unions and stuff. Those are the customers that really could pay out this world of creators to produce a lot of content. And then we scale. And yeah, the 5-10 year goal is to be the media asset brokerage for the majority of small content productions, and just kind of be the facilitator of anything in that space, because that's what it is. The brands that spend, $1.5 million on a couple commercials in one state, and they're getting all their product shots and they're getting, value for a year, they could pump that same money into our platform and get literally weekly media assets from all over the world produced at the same quality. And so that's kind of the vision we should approve and then get everyone paying for it.
I love it, man. It's I freelanced for a long time before we started Mountain Born, and it's a stressful space to be in, because there's a lot of pieces to that. When you're a freelancer, you're also running your own personal business, and you're needing to bring in that work. So having something like global media assets that's giving you the opportunity to come in on projects that maybe you as a freelancer would have never had access to. Um, that medium is so needed in the industry, because it is extremely overwhelming as a freelancer to think like, I got a mortgage
Mhm.
and I've got this, that, whatever. I've got these expenses. And unless I'm working my ass off to bring in the next person or deal, you, it leaves less time for the creative work. And you're putting so much time into building the business that, I mean, it can be pretty overwhelming for an individual. And that's why most people end up quitting the idea of it. It's like, I'm just going to go back to working the 9 to 5, being the creative guy at such and such brand.
Exactly.
Um, Bridging that gap between creators and the work itself is so needed. So that's why I was initially so attracted to you guys and your vision, is because it is, I think there should be more freelancers and there should be less like massive production houses that take up a huge sharehold of the industry. People start to get known, and those are the type of production houses that can scale on these like millions of dollar projects, and then they're hiring tons of people to do projects all over the world, and the freelancer gets swallowed. Um,
Yep.
so you've got the 5-10 year goal. You're based out of Telluride,
Yes,
correct?
as for now.
Uh, where do you where do you see global media assets kind of? Do you think you're staying in Colorado? Is that where the company's going to be based?
Well, yeah, it's hard because I'd love for the company to be headquartered in Telluride, and to be here forever. The whole rural Colorado thing and helping with the economic development here is big for me and for us. But in all reality, to scale the company, it's pretty important to have connections outside of the 25 people who live in Telluride. And so this community is
Yeah.
extremely valuable. But at the same time, we have a scalable vision, and I don't live around other startup founders. I don't live in San Francisco or New York, and so it'll be pretty important at some point for us to be around those people. The company itself is incorporated in outside of Colorado, anyways, for financial reasons, but it'll never leave this community. Like that's what's most important, is that having it built around action sports and like tapping into like our advisory board has, it's kind of hilarious. We have like an ex chief transformation officer for Microsoft and an ex global content planner from Adidas, and then we have like Lucas Foster, who's an Olympic snowboarder who hasn't picked up a pen and paper
Yeah.
in 8 years, but he's just an icon in the snowboard industry, and so that is essential for us to always be based around it. For personal reasons, I also don't want to be in Telluride for forever. It's I grew up here. I know every single person in and out. So yeah, we'll always be around Colorado, but I'm not quite sure if we'll be here forever.
Yeah. I grew up in a very small ski community. I grew up in Lake Arrowhead, California, which is right next to Big Bear. Born and raised Bear Mountain Park rat. What was your experience growing up in Telluride, a small community?
Oh, it's so funny, man. If you asked me at age 16, I'd say I'll do anything in life except for return to Telluride. Because like I love it so
Yeah,
much, but you get so used to all the people and the same stuff, and the off seasons are hard and the on seasons are crazy. And Telluride has my heart, and I'm so appreciative to be back here. But it's kind of exhausting, you know? It's cool to meet new people, and
yeah,
you don't realize how sheltered you are. Like, I didn't travel that much, and I think a lot of 18-year-old kids think they know everything. But it was so much worse in Telluride, too, 'cause you only get one opinion, and you only get one demographic of human. You only are surrounded by one race. Like it's not diverse at all. And there's nothing more like
yeah.
traveling opens your mind so much. Being around other people opens your mind so much. Just if you really want to learn, you have to be able to embrace new stuff, and that's impossible to do from inside of a box.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I like look back at it now as I'm getting older as like, whoa, that was a cool experience. I learned a lot. It gave me my love for the outdoors. It turned me into the skier that I am today. Every part of my life is influenced by growing up in a small ski community, but it does get difficult and it gets old and you see the same people all the time. And 16-year-old me said the same thing, like, oh man, I will never ski at Bear Mountain again in my life. And now I live here in Colorado, and the only thing I want to do is go home and ski and spend time there. So it's funny how like the mind shifts over the years. It's the same thing with like parents. Like you think your parents aren't cool, and you never want to spend time with them when you're a teenager. And now I get on the phone with my folks, and I'm like, man, I wish I could just sit down and have a meal with you guys, and we're all so spread
Yep,
out.
totally.
Um, it's it's an interesting world growing up in a ski community, and I think that also played into a lot of the things that I faced later in life with addiction and mental health and these things, that you're surrounded by this very like party esque small ski town. Everyone wants to party. You're at the mountains. It's part of the culture here, and that got old too.
It's intense.
Yeah. So a little bit more about your skiing. We got a big audience that loves skiing. Have you always been a freestyle skier? Did you grow up racing and then into freestyle, or what was kind of your whole world in
Yeah,
skiing
my
like?
path was racing. I started racing. That was the only thing I was ever good at, to be honest. I guess it was maybe seventh or eighth grade, which is super young, but that's when they start really starting, putting together the Olympic development teams. That I was winning races and doing the Junior Olympics, in Steamboat Winter Park, and I was good at that. And there's like I joined the Rocky Mountain development team, and I spent a summer in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center, and that was really cool. And then I got a really bad concussion, um, and I tore my LCL, and then I was in high school and I wanted to like wear skinny jeans and like do bad stuff with my friends, and the whole let's spend all of our money and all of our time ski racing was less attractive to me. I wanted to like hang out with girls
Yeah,
and all that, so I just quit ski racing and I tried getting into like big mountain, and I got injured way more. In like my first year big mountain, I broke my sternum and like six ribs. It
oof,
was such a dumb fall. I like landed on a I landed off a big cliff, and my right pole went into a stump, and like my chest went into the top of my pole and broke my sternum, which was crazy. And then once I recovered from that, I broke some other stuff and I pretty much just put down competitive skiing like early in high school. And then it wasn't towards the end of high school I started park skiing. I didn't hit a rail until I was like 18 or 19. And then when I got to Boulder and I started skiing Eldora, I fell in love with park. And then I just like park skied a ton.
yeah,
And it was so much fun to me to show up and just progress again. Because I mean, it's the same with anything. You hit a flat point in your progression curve and you can't get better. And that's how I felt with big mountain skiing. And so park, since it was so new to me and I had all the control with my skis, I could show up and just learn a new trick, and every day learn a new trick. And so that was so much fun. And then I kind of just park skied a lot since then. I lived in Spain and I indoor skied for like a winter, just in this little tiny indoor park in Madrid. So of course it was only park skiing. That
Wow.
was really fun. And it's
Yeah.
funny because growing up as a racer, I would have never turned into a park rat. Like it drives me nuts that I love parks so much, but it's just fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a yeah, man, I feel so seen right now. And there's people that listen to this podcast that are going to hear this story and know exactly what I'm talking about. So, the whole pole to the sternum, chest, broken ribs. We were up at Mammoth for competition. I think the competition was like on a Friday. Competition ends around like noon. It was like a morning thing. We had the whole rest of the day to just go like free ski and have fun before we headed back to the Big Bear area on the on the ski bus. So everything finishes, immediately throw the race skis away, put the park skis on, and the main line at Mammoth is
Yeah.
huge. The last three, the 3 pack jump line at Mammoth is huge, and I'm we're hitting it like all afternoon, having a blast. And it was a little bit later in the year, and right after the third jump in the main line, they've got these like gates because there's like crossing trails that all come into the same place, so they try and slow everyone down. So they have these fences that are like staggered. You have to ski around them, and there was like a lip being created from the slush from so many people turning that we were just jumping. We'd hit the third jump and we're coming in like fucking Mach 10 into these things, and you just jump over the gate so you could keep going. And sure enough, late in the day, I it's probably one of my last runs of the day, and the lip just collapses, and my tips caught the gate, ski pole right to the
Oh,
chest, the top of the ski pole, broke a few ribs, collapsed
oh
lung,
my
like one
God.
of my ribs went
Yeah,
into my
yeah.
lung, had the collapsed lung, broke my wrist. But it's so funny because when I have tried to explain that to people in the past, they're like, you hit your pole? Like, how did what?
I've never heard
It's
someone
like,
with an
no.
injury. That's
Yeah. Yeah. I when you started saying that, I was like, oh my god, I feel so seen.
that's
But yeah, I just went over the handlebars, and the pole planted, hit me right there in the chest, and it was becoming like a pretty known thing that I tend, when I was really getting into competition freestyle skiing, I'd get hurt every year.
mhm.
Something, broken wrist, collarbone, this, that, whatever. Um, so when it first happened, everyone's like, "Oh, what'd you do now?" And I was like, "This one's bad. Like I'm sitting there at the bottom of the main park at Mammoth. Like this is bad." The ski patroller was came up to me, and I walked myself to the ski patrol office because I was like at the base
Mhm.
already. He was like, "Oh, you just knocked the wind out of yourself. You'll be fine, man." I was like, "No, like
No, it's not.
I can't breathe, man. I don't know what's going on. Normally, I would just walk things off like this and like get myself to the hospital or something, but I was like, I'm getting lightheaded because I can't breathe,
Oh,
and yeah, it's so funny that you did the same thing with the ski pole.
yeah, that's
I'd never I'd never heard another person doing that. So look at that.
yeah, it's great.
Um, so I know you've wanted to keep global media assets kind of in that outdoor space, but you guys, is the plan to also push just into global markets outside of just the outdoor scene?
Um, so totally. You got to think about. I mean, you run Mountain Board Media. As soon as you have the talents to film, you can film anything. Like you might.
Yeah,
The what we're trying to do is utilize these one man teams and prove that the one man or one woman team can shoot all sorts of content. And so, like
yeah,
Cedar shot for Ferrari and then shot real estate the next day and then flies to Hood and shoots for Lucas Foster in the half pipe. It doesn't really matter, right? Like when you can run a camera and you have some artistic vision, you can shoot it all. So we're just trying to tap into that talent. It's really important to me to also tap into the in front of the camera talent. Those are the skiers who, it's so sad. Just this is a fact that I'm totally making up, but it's probably valid. If you're in the top 1% of skiers, it's pretty unlikely that you make any money doing what you love. And if you're in the top 10% of guitar players, you can show up to a bar and play music and make some money for the night. But if you're in the top 1% of skiers, there's nothing you can do to monetize your talent. And so it's a passion project for me to get those people paid somehow. But then the business hat of mine says, well, really the filmers are the ones who get the money and are, provide the most value. So Global Media Assets is targeting the filmers primarily. Anyone's welcome to apply, models, athletes, and they'll get, used on the platform for sure, and they'll get paid sometimes. But the value comes from those one-man teams that can shoot anything. And so if some credit union wants an office shot and they go to Global Media Assets to source it, we'll definitely facilitate the transaction.
Yeah. I it's funny that you bring that that up, being in the 1% of skiers and nobody makes money. Skiing is this very interesting industry that you got to be like the 1% of the
Yep.
1% to like actually crack into some money. There's tons of guys that ton you see in the X Games, you see in the Olympics that are barely
Oh, I
making
know.
ends
It's
meet.
insane.
And it's a very interesting sport where from the public eye you could look at a pro skier in the Olympics and be like, oh man, I bet that guy's so successful and has this beautiful house in Aspen and he trains at the Olympic facilities. And it's like, no, that guy's probably scraping together like 50K a year from various sponsors to wear their gear, if that, in competitions, and they're paying coaches, and if they're not getting gold, they're not getting paid. And it's a weird thing. And I was just talking to somebody about this last night. Somebody was asking me like what I do now that I don't like ski competitively, and I said to her, I was like, the crazy thing is that the second that I stopped competing, I actually started to make money in skiing the way that I wanted to, and then making brand
Right.
deals and content out of my skiing, and I was skiing exactly how I wanted to ski. Like there was no coaches, there was no you need to show up here at this time. It's literally like this winter I had a group of buddies and we're like, let's go film in
Yeah.
Alaska. We had all of us had never been to Alaska. We went and backcountry skied for 2 weeks in Alaska, skiing the craziest shit that we've ever skied. And it was just skiing the stuff that we wanted to ski and filming it, and made way more money from those 2 weeks of just wearing jackets or creating content for a brand around this like cool trip that
Hmm.
we did than I could have ever dreamed of doing any level of competition skiing. And it's weird unless you're like the Alex Ferreiras, the Bobby Browns, these like super high end 1% of the 1% ski athletes that are they're the guys that are getting the cover of an Under
Yep.
Armour, you know, gallery or whatever. Unless you're getting that, like there's no fucking money in this sport. And
It's like
but the industry as a whole has unlimited money, which is crazy.
it's really weird, honestly. It's like making the NFL in skiing, getting onto those stages doesn't mean shit. Like you have to still be Tom Brady to get paid at all. And that's I want to talk
Yeah.
to you about maybe participating in some of the Dean's List stuff because the Dean's List, like that's our vision now, or our mission really, is to try to provide just support to those individuals that deserve it and find new avenues for them to get paid. Obviously, media is the only way right now to get paid, whether it's brand deals,
Yeah.
whether it's having a TikTok shop that you get commissions from. Like it's the only way to get paid unless you are Tom Brady, which is extremely unlikely. And so
Yeah.
we're doing like an action sports summit this summer. Lucas Foster's actually going to put it on in Telluride. He's going to be the new chairman of the Dean's List. And so that'll be like the end of August, I think. And we're going to connect it to skate camp and we're going to do like a bunch of little talks and get sponsors, give away gear and all this. But it'd be cool for you to talk about how you actually monetize skiing at all because I failed to do that. Like the Dean's List, we we went to Switzerland. Okay, we crowd funded the first Dean's List. We raised like $3,000 from people to pay for us to make this movie. I think the goal was 10,000, and don't tell Kickstarter, but we had to put in the last like 7,000 to close the round, or else we wouldn't have got the money. And then we got $3,000, even though it said 10,000. And then we paid
Yeah.
to go to Sun Valley and shoot. Went to Switzerland. Of course, we all paid out of pocket to go to Switzerland. We went all over the world, shot the films, and then toured them everywhere, and netted less than $10,000. And so, yeah, we never found a way to monetize skiing, honestly.
Yeah, and that my story getting back into skiing is an interesting one in that my injury happened in 2016. I broke my back and neck in a pretty horrific ski accident in Park City, Utah, and that's where I was also introduced to drugs and alcohol at a much heavier level, being prescribed opiates, and um, I spent years addicted to drugs and alcohol and thinking, oh, I'll never get back to skiing. And 2 or 3 seasons ago, my business partner at Mountain Born says, "Dude, you gotta film this, like what you're doing." And I was like, "Nah, man, like this is just fun. Like I've never really been like doing big mountain skiing. Like this is just fun for me, and I don't want to make anything serious about
Right.
skiing." And he was like, "Come on, dude, just like take this Insta." At the time, the Insta 360 had like just came out. I think it was like the
Hmm.
X1 or something, and he hands this thing to me. I'd never held a pole out in front of me, so I'm skiing like blower powder with one pole. But I take this clip, and I was like hollering, and I totally forgot that I was even holding a camera. But I'm just being like a kid in a candy shop skiing blower
Hmm.
powder, and it like blew up on social media. And everyone's like, "Oh my god, this is the attitude that everyone needs to have about skiing." And it had very little to do with my skiing, and more just like, "Oh man, like that was
Yeah.
fucking awesome." I was a kid in a candy shop again. And that was the first time that I had been excited about skiing in like a very
Hmm.
long time. And I was like, man, maybe I should start to do this. And I just started recording, like putting a GoPro on my helmet. And I was like, I'm just going to record this stuff for fun. And I would like pull clips and put it on social. And the end of the season, like 2 years ago, all these brands just started reaching out to me. Hey, do you have a ski sponsor? And when I was competing, my very first sponsor when I was 11 years old was Zeal
Yeah.
Optics, and I reached out to the my old team manager at Zeal, and he works at Pit Viper now, but the kind of director of marketing at the time when I was a kid was still at Zeal, so he connected me with him, and we connect, and I go to their offices in Boulder, and they're like, "We want to sign you," and I was like, "What?" I was like, "What do you mean you want to sign me? I just, I'm just putting GoPro videos," and they're like, "Well, it's awesome what you're doing, and like we support like your podcast and all these like fun things that you're doing. We want to bring you on the team in Zeal." And then I started connecting with ski brands and my boot sponsor, and like all of these things like fell into place when I was not trying. And I think that was a big shift for me because my whole life was dedicated to this one goal of like I'm going to race and I'm going to be really good at racing. And then I got tired of racing and I'm going to get into freestyle skiing and I'm going to have coaches and I'm going to do these competitions and I'm going to try and make it all the way. And then one injury derails it and you think, "Oh, I hate this sport. It's taken everything from me." I, then turned to drugs and alcohol and all of these terrible paths in my life that I was like, skiing it's over. It's done. But then the second I just started skiing the way that I wanted to, and just being honestly kind of out of control on camera, just like having the time of my life doing something that I love, people were like connecting with it. I was like, holy shit, this is so crazy. Like, I thought that everyone thinks that they know their path. And like you said, at 18 years old, do you think we know
Hmm.
everything? Like, I had it all figured out. I got to see you Boulder. I was 18 years old. I'm fired up. I'm skiing competitions. Everything is going like perfectly. The sponsors are there, and then
Yeah.
it's gone. And I thought that was my only path in life. Um, so that is like the approach. It as silly as literally just taking a video on an Insta 360 of me being a kid in the white room, just getting face shots and snow flying up and me screaming and hollering and hugging my buddies at the end of the line. Like it was crazy, but like brands started reaching out to me, and I was like, "What? I don't deserve this." So it's been a really fun experience for me to kind of get back into the industry in my own way. Um, I don't consider myself like a professional skier. I'm just like a skier that has fun that happens to get paid to do it. And uh, that's where the idea of like launching the creative agency came out of, was like, we're creating all this really cool content. Why don't we start doing this on like the professional level? So we launched Mountain Born a year and a half ago, and we've just been in an uphill trajectory. I was like just telling you before this call, we just like landed our biggest retainer contract ever. We've been project based for, thanks, man. You know, we've been project based forever, and um, to have like a
Yeah.
set, we're giving you these things every single month for the next 12 months, and it's consistent check into the business. Like, I wanted to cry coming out of that meeting. All the years of like building up to this was like, fuck
I can
yeah.
imagine.
Um, and you know that it all of these little things, like, they all fell into place from small things that happened in my life. And I talk about on this podcast a lot, like, there was years that I didn't understand like why I was going through all this pain and heartache of addiction and suicide ideation and all of these things. But looking back on it, it was the railroad track that got me to where I am today. And without these things, I don't know where I would be. Um, like Global Media Assets, it was born out of the dean's list and a shitty deal kind of going wrong with a big company. And you know, these, it's funny how in the moment we can think this is the worst thing we've ever experienced, to now, holy shit, like this was all born out of this shitty thing that turned great.
Totally. No, it's all
So
mindset, man. Like, I don't know what the saying is about it all. I hate when people say it all happens for a reason, because yeah, if you have the right mindset, then it all happens for a reason. But I like to say that um, it's all already written. It's just about how you read it. Because if you were to look back, like,
love that.
it's like a total philosophy thing. You'd have two twin brothers, and both of them get beat by their dad, and one goes way downhill in life and gets depressed forever, and the other ends up becoming wildly successful. And the successful one tells the story that he was beat by his father, and he's so grateful for that because it taught him grit and integrity, and he always has a reason to fight, and that's why he climbed out of that hole and became successful. And then the depressed one says, yeah, I was beat by my dad and I suffered trauma and I never recovered. So it's all mindset. Like, if you just keep going, you can always rewrite the story and tell it the way you want to, you know?
Yeah, and it's so hard in the
Oh
moment
yeah.
at
You never
times,
in the moment. That's
you
like
know.
when you have to decide if you want to keep going with this story or like pick a new one, which is funny because I started like writing a book. I it was like a journal, but I structured it like a book, where it always was a chapter, and I'd write for a little bit longer than just like a journal entry. And so it's so interesting to kind of write your own life as a book and see where it's headed, and then you can kind of decide, is this the trajectory I want to be on right now or not? And it's so cool to watch yourself change it in the moment. Like, I'll read back now a year, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's where I was like, I was trying to act like the story was headed this direction, when in reality it wasn't at all. That's just how I wanted it to go. And so now I'm like, in order to finish the book, I think I have to go back to every single entry and write like where I was actually headed or what changed after that. I don't know. It's weird.
I love that, man. I am a big proponent of
Hmm.
writing. It was funny. I was right before that meeting we had this afternoon with that brand. My business partner was like, "Let me create a document so we can throw some questions in there." And I was like, "Oh, I've got a ton of questions like right here. They're all
Yeah.
just on paper." And he was like, "What the fuck? You use paper, man?" Yeah, dude. It's and he. I was like, "Of course I use paper. Like I don't know. I feel it's like an old school way for me. And when I write things down, they
Totally.
stick. Same thing with like journaling with me. If I write something down, even if it's a really shitty thing that I'm writing down, it gets stuck in my head. That's like, okay, maybe I don't want to experience
Yeah.
that again. Like, how can I reshift the thing that I'm experiencing right now into something positive? I'm a huge proponent for writing, so that's
Me too.
awesome. And I was just having this thought when you were talking about funding for Dean's List and talking about making money in the ski industry. Do you know John Padilla?
I don't think so.
The So John is he started the Mountain on My Mind
Okay.
crew, um, and mental health and skiing, and His brother committed suicide, and he's dedicated these films the last few years, and they've got this awesome crew of skiers. And um, he took a similar approach to crowdfunding, and it was actually a really interesting way he did it. He reached out to a ton of brands, literally just like shooting
Mm-hmm.
darts at ski brands, and was like, "Hey, we're really wanting to create this film based around mental health and skiing." And instead of asking for money, he got brands to send him product, and they did a fundraiser sort of thing where you could buy entries to like win a pair of Line skis, and Line donated like 3 pairs of skis to the project. So they were able to raise, I think he said, like, I just had him on the podcast this last week, and he said, I think they raised like
Yeah.
$10,000 from just selling like raffle tickets for the possibility of winning a pair of Line skis, or, a BCA backpack, or, whatever. And that is how they were able to kickstart into the industry. Was you can pitch brands, and this goes for freelancers too. Like, you can pitch brands until the cows come home. Like, this is my vision. This is how much it's going to cost. No one is going to trust you unless you have that portfolio of really good
Yeah.
stuff to prove your worth. Uh, a little tip that I was given, and something that was super helpful for me, is I did content for product
Mm-hmm.
trades so often when I first started. Not only was I like, if I ever thought like, oh man, I need this, I need a new pair of sunglasses or something, my other one's broke, I would just reach out to,
Mm-hmm.
whoever, and I'll create this content for you. And it gave me the ability to like build up a portfolio, and also it wasn't a ton of overhead for the brand. They just looked at it as like, okay, even if it's terrible content, it was $20 in overhead for us to send out this product to this guy. Um, and that was a huge way for me to get into the industry. Was I wouldn't, I tried offering these big contracts for a long time, and I was getting like beat down of like, oh, we'll give you $100 to do this, and that is takes some grit to like keep going past that and be like, no, there is going to be a day that I land a $10,000
Right.
contract, or there is going to be a day that I can make it to the point that I want to. So I was doing these like product for content trades, and it built up my
Mm-hmm.
portfolio as a freelancer. It started building up trust within the individuals that receive the content. Director of marketing of whatever company, be like, oh man, this stuff is good. So then the next time around, I'd get a random phone call. Hey man, we really want to bring you on for this project, and we'll pay you
Right.
this time. Um, so that was a fun, and it was painful at times to think, man, I just put a lot of work into this for a $150
Hey, that's the
backpack or
way it
something.
goes, though.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter what industry you're
And
in. It's like you're always gonna give stuff up in the beginning like that, and if you just gotta go and do it. Like we've
yeah,
been encouraging people a bunch right now in this whole like I'm trying to call it a freelancer revolution. Is you have to just prove your worth, and if you say you can, shoot the commercial and make it look the same as the broadcast one that was 500K, you have to just do that. And so we've been like even paying creators to do spec work. Just to prove that they can, which is essentially the same thing as the trade for product. You just don't even get product.
yeah. Just go out and create the
Well, I've
content
seen I got
based
the
on
idea
something you
from
already
a
have.
kid in Telluride, a high school kid who's a really good videographer, and he just started like shooting spec work. I think he made like an ad for Toyota with like his mom's RAV4 or whatever. And I was like, this is good. Like, this is great. Of course, Toyota wouldn't put it on their website, but it's like really could go on their social media. And Toyota would never even see
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And that's what's so cool about what you guys are doing, man. Seriously. Um, Building that platform for individuals to be able to have that interaction with a brand, with, you know, maybe it's Toyota, whoever it is, it gives you that opening to a world that when I first started, would have never had access to. Um, the I have sent probably
Oh
5,000
my
Instagram
goodness.
messages over the years to brands, just like, "Hi, my name's Austin
Mhm.
Becker. I'm a skier from Colorado. I own a freelance
Mhm.
marketing
Yeah, I've sent all the
agency."
same emails. They're the sponsorship ones. I remember, like
Yeah,
from age 12 on, as soon as I had an email, just the sponsor me as a skier. God, I sent so many of those.
yeah, it's it's exhausting.
It's exhausting to think back on how many of
But
those I
some,
sent and like how few times I actually got sponsored or got a free pair of goggles or whatever, you know?
yeah, it's a shot in the dark, but I feel like it's a very common thing that most creators or athletes or whatever that aren't, like we were saying, if you're not that 1% of the 1%, where you're that good that you just get noticed
Hmm.
regardless, you got to put in a ton of work um, to get
Totally.
noticed. And that involves a lot of self promotion and reaching out in endless email cycles. And, you reach out to one person. Do you have the contact info for the guy at GoPro? You got the contact info for the guy at Toyota. Like, it's never ending.
Totally.
And, I'm sure you guys are facing that at Global Media Assets as launching as this company is like bringing in those brands. It is a lot of like shot in the dark and getting people to believe it.
Exactly. It's
Um,
actually it's almost insane how high the customer acquisition cost is when it comes to the brand side. Like these are lifetime customers, and once we get GoPro on the platform, and well, they have a great marketing setup the way they do it. But a company like that, like it'll be there forever, and there's a ton of value in it. But it is crazy. That's part of the reason why we're doing this is that it was so difficult for me to find brands when I was trying to run an agency. I was like, oh, I'll just get in touch with here's an example, which I'm still like embarrassed that we failed this hard. But last last winter we went to Japan, and we were gonna fly from Denver to Japan. We were gonna ski all over Japan. We had a sled day set up, we had a cat day set up, we had resort days, backcountry, and we had a crew of insane skiers. Like we're talking the top 5% of the top 1%, right? Like the guys that just barely
yeah,
aren't, noticed on the tour, but definitely fully sponsored by all the companies. And so the companies they were sponsored by didn't have any budget left. And I was like, well, it doesn't matter. We can make an ad for literally anyone. I can make an ad for an American Express on this trip. Like, I'm going to hit up a lot of brands. And I started in like September saying, hey, we're going to produce ad content for you, pretty low cost stuff. This is the team. I made pitch decks, all of it, and I didn't get through to anyone. I completely failed to secure. I think actually no, not I think, but Flylo did give us some money, but it was actually for the dean's list for our entire production, not just for the Japan trip. But that was a part of my like problem statement was there's no way that if one of these guys just opened up his email and saw what I was saying, he wouldn't want to work with us. Like we're providing a ton of value. They just don't trust it, and there's such an overload on that, and they just stick to like their
yeah.
little, group that they have in house, their little UGC platform they pay for, the money that they allocate to influencer marketing, and they don't have any interest in doing other stuff, which is such a shame because it's a massive opportunity. And there's so many of us that are hungry, that are doing incredible things, and will do it for cheaper.
So a question that I had early on to you, that I know the creative individuals that listen to this podcast will be interested in. There are a ton of UGC agencies, right? So they're all over the place right now. Open sponsorship, we
Hmm.
sponsored, Brillo, all these different brands. UGC is this weird thing that's happening in our marketplace right now that like shitty non-professional content is winning for some reason in a portion of the
Hmm.
market. You're not a UGC agency, and that's why I like you.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's why we're the only one. No,
So
we're not the only one. Go on, sorry.
yeah, so I guess my question to you is the question that I asked you early on. What is setting you apart from the we sponsored open sponsorship sort of thing?
So first of all, yeah, people love the UGC and it performs well, and like that's because what you were saying earlier about your POW video that blew up because of your energy and you yelling in the POW. Like the majority of people watching that weren't big time skiers. They didn't relate to it because it's like, oh, that's a deep turn. They related to you and they were happy to see how happy you were, and people love that. And so in
Yeah.
no way do I think user generated content is worthless. I think that it's so valuable to show your customer enjoying the product in a simple and relatable way. I do think that it's sad when you lose creativity behind your branding and you let your branding turn into your customer. So when you see those Instagram accounts, and I'm not going to call out any of these brands because some of them I work with, but there's a lot of brands where you go to their page and all of the content is the exact same across a lot of different brands, where it's just people with the can of whatever product or the socks just smiling. And it's like, that's great. This person's enjoying it. You're getting exposure, but you're getting exposure because Instagram wants people to stay on their app, and Instagram is showing that content more than other contents that people stay on the app and they get more ad dollars. And you're not differentiating your company from any other company. So creative directors need to, pride themselves on being different and being unique and still having creative vision. And in saying that, I understand that a lot of those creative directors can't afford the ad agencies that charge $1.5 million dollars. Instead, they can work with incredibly talented and creative freelancers to produce high quality content. And if they can't find any, then they can go to our platform and find them. But they shouldn't just turn to homogenizing all of their branding like every other brand.
Yeah, and that that was my, you gave me a similar response that I was like, I trust this guy. Like, I trust this because the UGC platform industry, not calling out any particular agency or company that's doing it, but it is a painful space to be in. They are like paying sometimes creators
Oh yeah.
$20 for a video, like $20. And these agencies are getting paid probably $500 a video from the brand just from somebody holding their phone up. They'll pay whatever company agency $500 per video, and they're paying the creator
I know, it's so
$20.
sad.
And it's truly crazy, the way that the world has gone in that way, and it makes the freelance kind of content creator rather than like a professional
Yeah.
videographer or photographer. It That's also difficult for them because they're doing the same thing. Whether you're an influencer or whatever, you're having to do a lot of that outreach, like reaching out to companies like, "Hey, will you work with me? I want to promote your product." That is the same thing that a freelancer goes through trying to get, freelance deals. And for a lot of these platforms that aren't paying anything to anyone, it doesn't give anyone any
Hmm.
hope. And you building this platform, that was another selling point, is that you are giving a big portion of it to the creator. And you were very transparent with me early on about how you're paying creators and the setup and everything that you guys are doing to make this thing happen, but that the majority is going to the creator, and then you guys have your like processing
Hmm.
fees and things to you know keep the platform afloat, obviously. um, so I always appreciated that, and it's, like I said earlier, this is a needed thing in this industry that unfortunately right now is being shadowed out by UGC content. So when I finally heard, oh my God, there's like a professional aspect to this, there's not just another UGC agency popping up. They pop up
Oh,
every
there's so
day.
many.
That this is a unique approach. And I don't think that UGC is going to win forever, honestly. We're in a phase in our marketplace right now that it's winning for all of history. Professional content has always won, and we're in a time period right now that I think people got tired of your day to day advertisements. They got tired of the Super Bowl ads, and they are trusting their influencer, their skier, their snowboarder, their biker. Oh, that guy rides Solomon skis. I really like such and such skier. I'm going to buy Solomon skis. That makes sense in a lot of ways, but professional content will always be professional content, and like you said, it shapes the branding of a company. UGC is not shaping the branding of any company. It's what's selling
Yeah.
right now, and um, so that was a long-winded way of appreciating what you guys are doing. I know the amount of work that's going into this is beyond measure. It's easy for everyone in the background to see your social media or whatever and think like, oh, this is really cool. But this stuff that happens in shareholders and money getting
It's
involved in,
challenging.
it's, it's a challenge. So I tip my cap to you and the team over there at GMA and keep crushing it.
Thank you, Austin. That yeah, means a ton.
Yeah. So, end of every Falling Off the Floor podcast, it's something that we call in the Alcoholics Anonymous rooms, but I use it here. If you have any burning desires, is there anything you want to tell the audience before you go?
Ooh.
Um, any pieces of advice, ways to contact you, you can throw in there, ways to get onto the GMA platform, stuff like that.
Well, I appreciate giving us the platform like that. Yeah, no, the biggest thing, my burning desire is to talk to me, please. I'm extremely accessible. I respond to everything on every platform. I spend 12 hours a day on my computer contacting people and making deals happen. So please reach out to me. If this sounds stupid to you, if you're like, oh my God, what are these guys doing? Please let me know. I'd love some new insight, questions, curiosities, concerns. And then if you are a creator, a videographer, and you want to work in this industry and you're struggling to do so, also please contact me. That's my goal. Right now, what we're doing for everyone who's applied to the platform is saying produce an ad for your favorite brand. One, we'll pay you to do it. And two, if you post it with us, we'll have our own marketing team try to get you in touch with that brand to facilitate a long-term deal where you guys work together for forever. And this isn't the agency model like you were saying earlier, where we take $500 and pay you 20. This is a freelancing platform, so the bid is there, the contract's in front of you, and our fees on top of it, and it's not a significant portion. So please, yeah, apply to our platform, ask me questions, produce content, just yeah, help us build this community, and we'll be there to help you for sure.
Awesome. Well, Finn, it was a pleasure hosting you this week. This episode will be coming out next Wednesday. Yeah, like the man said, if you need to get in touch with me, you need to get in touch with Finn, whatever. We're super accessible on social media. If you have questions for me, I can forward them to Finn. Appreciate all of the listeners as always, and we are out.